There is a precise, terrifying moment that happens to almost every functioning adult. It usually happens in the quiet spaces between the noise of your life. You are sitting in your car after parking, or staring at the ceiling at 3 in the morning, or freezing up during a conversation that should be simple. And in that silence, a question rises up from the bottom of your stomach. Why am I like this? You look at your hands, your career, your relationships, and you feel a disconnect. You realize that the way you react to stress doesn't match the reality of the danger. You realize that your voice tightens when you speak to authority figures, even though you are an expert in your field. You realize that you apologize for taking up space in an elevator. You feel a crushing wave of guilt when you sit down to rest on a Saturday, as if an invisible supervisor is watching you, clocking your productivity. You might tell yourself this is just who you are. You might call it your personality, your astrological sign, or just anxiety. But that is a comfortable lie. What you are experiencing in those moments is not a personality quirk. It is a glitch in the timeline. In those moments, you are not a 30-year-old or a 40-year-old or a 50-year-old making a conscious choice. You have been hijacked. You are reacting with the emotional logic, the fears, and the survival strategies of the child you once were. Most of us walk around believing we are the pilots of our own lives. We think we are making logical decisions based on the data in front of us. But the truth is far more unsettling. We are not the pilots. We are often just passengers in a vehicle steered by a ghost. A ghost that was formed before you could tie your shoelaces. A ghost that learned about the world before you learned long division. We need to talk about the architecture of your reality, because until you understand how the foundation was poured, you will never understand why the house keeps shaking every time the wind blows. This is not about blaming your parents. This is not about wallowing in the past. This is about forensic engineering. It is about understanding that your childhood did not just happen and then end. Childhood is not a chapter in a book that you finish and close. Childhood is the ink the book is written in. It is the operating system running in the background of your mind, silently executing code that dictates how you love, how you work, how you fight, and how you treat yourself when no one else is looking. Let us look at the biology, because this isn't just poetry, it is neuroscience. By the time you are 7 years old, the primary neural pathways in your brain, the superhighways of information, are already paved. Your brain is a recording device that never sleeps. In those early years, your brain was in a state of pure absorption, a theta wave state similar to deep hypnosis. You were downloading a blueprint of the world without any firewall, without any filter to say, this is wrong, or this isn't about me. If you grew up in a home where love was conditional, where you were only smiled at when you brought home an A or won a trophy, your brain wrote a line of code that says, I am only valuable when I am performing. Fast forward 20 years, you are now a workaholic executive who feels physically sick if you are not the smartest person in the room. You tell yourself you are just driven. But you aren't driven by ambition, you are driven by the terror of being ordinary, because to that 7-year-old inside you, being ordinary meant being invisible. If you grew up in a home where the emotional climate was unpredictable, where a parent was laughing 1 minute and screaming the next, your brain wrote a code that says, safety is an illusion. Constant vigilance is the price of survival. Today, you might be the person who can read the mood of a room the second you walk in. You think this is a superpower, you call it empathy. But often, it is not empathy. It is hyper-vigilance. It is a trauma response. You are scanning for threats because your nervous system never learned that it is safe to power down. You are exhausted, not because you are busy, but because you have been holding your breath for 3 decades. Consider the peacekeeper. If you grew up in a home where conflict was dangerous, where raised voices meant plates were about to shatter, or silence was about to last for days, you learned a very specific survival strategy. Be small, be easy, have no needs. If you don't have needs, you can't be a burden. If you agree with everyone, no one will yell. Today, you are the adult who cannot say no without feeling like you are dying inside. You are the one who stays in relationships that drain you dry because the unknown terror of being alone feels worse than the familiar pain of being used. You aren't being nice, you are being compliant. Because a long time ago, compliance kept you safe. This is the great tragedy of the unexamined life. The mechanisms that saved you as a child are the very things that are suffocating you as an adult. The armor that protected you from your father's criticism is now the wall that keeps your spouse from loving you. The dissociation that helped you survive your mother's neglect is now the fog that prevents you from feeling joy in your achievements. The perfectionism that earned you praise at school is now the anxiety that paralyzes you before you can even start a project. You are walking through a battlefield that no longer exists, wearing armor that is too heavy, fighting an enemy that has long since retired. But the body remembers. The body is the historian that cannot be bribed. You can lie to your friends. You can lie to your therapist. You can even lie to yourself. But you cannot lie to your nervous system. Why do you think your stomach churns when you have to set a boundary? Why do your shoulders migrate up to your ears when you make a mistake? Why does your throat close up when you try to express a vulnerability? It is because your body has stored the data of every time you were shut down, every time you were shamed, every time you were ignored. When you encounter a situation that feels even 1% similar to that old pain, your amygdala, the brain's smoke detector, hijacks your prefrontal cortex. It screams, "We are back there. It is happening again." And instantly, you regress. You might be 40 years old, wearing a suit, sitting in a boardroom, but internally, you are 4 years old, trembling because you spilled the milk. This is why logical advice rarely works for deep emotional patterns. You can read every self-help book in the world. You can understand intellectually that you are enough, but if your nervous system is wired to believe that you are only enough when you are suffering or serving others, the logic will bounce off you like bullets off a tank. You cannot think your way out of a feeling problem. You have to feel your way out. Let's go deeper into the invisible scripts. Let's talk about money. If you grew up hearing money doesn't grow on trees, or watching your parents fight in hushed, terrified whispers over bills, you absorbed a frequency of scarcity. As an adult, you might hoard money, unable to enjoy it, living in a constant low-grade panic that it will all disappear tomorrow. Or you might repel money, subconsciously sabotaging your own success because your internal script says wealth leads to conflict. You think you are making financial decisions. You are actually reenacting your parents' anxieties. Let's talk about love. This is perhaps the most painful arena of all. We do not choose who we love based on logic. We choose who we love based on familiarity. If love in your childhood felt like chasing someone who was emotionally unavailable, you will find yourself, again and again, attracted to partners who are cold, distant, or critical. A kind, stable, available partner will feel boring to you. They will feel like they lack chemistry. But what you call chemistry is often just your trauma recognizing a familiar dysfunction. You interpret the anxiety of uncertainty as passion. You interpret the pain of longing as depth. You are trying to win the game this time. You are trying to get the cold partner to finally love you, hoping that if you succeed, it will retroactively heal the wound of the parent who couldn't love you the way you needed. It is a subconscious rescue mission that is doomed to fail. And then there is the ghost child. The one who learned that the only way to be loved was to be invisible, to not require anything. As an adult, you might feel a profound sense of loneliness even when you are surrounded by people. You feel like you are behind a glass wall. You scream, but no sound comes out. To see your pain without you having to speak it. And when they don't because they can't, you feel confirmed in your ancient belief. See, I don't matter. No one cares. You prove your own nightmare true over and over again. But here is the pivot. Here is the moment where the story changes. The fact that you are aware of this, the fact that you are listening to this, and feeling a resonance in your chest, means that the spell is already breaking. Awareness is the acid that dissolves the chains of the past. As long as these patterns remain unconscious, they are fate. But the moment you make them conscious, they become choices. You must understand that your brain is plastic. It is malleable. The blueprint was poured at 7. Yes, but you can renovate the house. You can rewire the electricity. It is called neuroplasticity, and it is the most hopeful discovery of modern science. You are not a finished product. You are a work in progress. The process of changing this is not about fixing yourself, because you are not broken. You are adapted. You are a survivor of a specific environment. The goal now is to look at those adaptations and ask, Does this still serve me? Does being the fixer who solves everyone else's problems still serve you, or is it just exhausting you? Does being the perfectionist still protect you, or is it preventing you from creating? Does the silence still keep you safe, or is it keeping you lonely? This is the work of reparenting. It sounds abstract, but it is deeply practical. It means becoming the person you needed when you were younger, when that wave of anxiety hits because you made a mistake at work. Instead of spiraling into self-hatred, the adult in you steps in. You speak to the panic the way a wise, loving parent would speak to a terrified child. You don't say, "You idiot, pull it together." That is the voice of the past. You say, "It is okay, everyone makes mistakes. We will fix this. You are safe. I am not going to abandon you because of a spreadsheet error." When you feel the urge to shut down and run away from a difficult conversation with your partner, you catch yourself. You feel the impulse, the flight response, and you pause. You tell your nervous system, "I know this feels dangerous. I know this feels like the time Dad left, but I am an adult now. I have the vocabulary to speak. I can stay in the room." And you stay. You breathe. You rewrite the ending of the scene. Every time you choose a new reaction, you are physically laying down a new neural pathway in your brain. You are hacking through the jungle of your mind, creating a new trail. The first time is excruciating. The second time is hard. The 10th time is easier. The 100th time, it becomes your new default. You have to learn to tolerate the discomfort of being different. When you stop playing your old role, people around you might get uncomfortable. If you were the yes person and you start saying no, people who benefited from your lack of boundaries will be upset. They might say you've changed. They might say you are being selfish. Let them. That friction is the sound of you growing. You are breaking the contract you signed when you were a child. A contract that said, "I will set myself on fire to keep you warm." You must also grieve. This is the part no one wants to do. You have to grieve the childhood you didn't have. You have to grieve the parents you wished for but didn't get. You have to accept that they did the best they could with the broken tools they had, and that it still wasn't enough. You have to stop waiting for them to apologize. Stop waiting for them to change. Stop waiting for the closure that will never come. Closure is not something they give you. Closure is something you give yourself by deciding to stop knocking on a door that has never opened. There is a profound freedom on the other side of this grief. When you stop needing your past to be different, you become free to create a future that is entirely your own. You start to uncover who you actually are, beneath the trauma responses. You realize that maybe you aren't an introvert, maybe you were just silenced, maybe you aren't bad at math, maybe you were just terrified of being wrong. Maybe you aren't unemotional, maybe you just learned that tears were dangerous. You begin to discover your original self, the version of you that existed before the world told you who to be. This is the hero's journey. It is not about slaying a dragon out there in the world. It is about slaying the dragon in the mirror. It is about looking at that 7-year-old child inside you. The one who is still scared, still trying to earn love, still hiding in the closet, and taking them by the hand. It is about saying, "I've got it from here. I am in charge now." You don't have to drive the car anymore. You can rest. You can play. You are more than the sum of your injuries. You are more than the echoes of your parents' voices. You are the author of the rest of the book. The first few chapters were written for you. Yes, they were written in messy handwriting, full of plot holes and unfair tragedies. But the pen is in your hand now. The page is blank. What are you going to write? Because the most beautiful thing about adulthood is not the freedom to eat ice cream for dinner or stay up late. It is the freedom to choose your own family, your own values, your own definition of safety, and your own definition of love. It is the freedom to build a home inside yourself, where that inner child finally feels safe enough to put down their armor and sleep. So, the next time you react to something small with a feeling that is too big, pause. Take a breath, recognize the ghost. Thank it for trying to protect you, and then, gently, firmly step into the driver's seat. You have a life to live, and for the first time, it is truly yours.